You're plugged into Schaumburg Speaks, a podcast highlighting and celebrating local businesses and community in the Schaumburg area.
Hello and welcome to Schaumburg Speaks, the podcast where we are plugging into the vibrant business community life of Schaumburg. This show is proudly brought to you by the Schaumburg Business Association and Ian Ryan Interactive. I'm your host, Andrea Bewer, the president of the Schaumburg Business Association, and today we have a very, very special episode lined up for you. So special, in fact, I had to get two co-hosts to help me with this. Joining me is none other than the mayor of Schaumburg, Tom Daly, and the executive director of the Schaumburg Park District, who was just awarded the 2025 PGA of American Golf Executive of the Year, Tony Lafrenere. Welcome to Schaumburg Speaks.
So thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and join the group here. This is going to be fun today. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so excited to be on the show. Talk about one of my favorite tournaments at one of my favorite golf courses. And fantastic to meet you, Joie.
So now, today's episode is tailor-made for all the golf and PGA Tour enthusiasts out there. Mayor Daly, Tony, and I are just thrilled to welcome a true sports legend in the industry. Joining us is the executive director of the 2026 President's Cup at Medinah Country Club, the one, the only Joie Chitwood III.
Well, thank you so much. It's exciting to be here. It's hard to believe that Montreal is in the rearview mirror, and now the focus is on Medinah and the President's Cup. And I've actually been here now for about 20 months so far, and excited about where we are, but it's nice for the spotlight to shine on us. So Mayor, Tony, Andrea, thank you for having me. I'm really excited, and I love to talk sports, love to talk golf, and we're going to have a fun little conversation here about all the exciting things that's going to happen when we host the President's Cup in September of 26.
We are excited. So for our listeners who may not be familiar with Joey's incredible background, let me give you a quick highlight reel. So Joie Chitwood III is the executive director of the President's Cup, one of the PGA Tour's premier team events, which will take center stage at Medinah Country Club in 2026. But that's not all. He also serves as the executive director of the Truist Championship, a signature event on the PGA Tour happening this May in Philadelphia. Before stepping into the golf world, Joey had an extensive career in motorsports, including key leadership roles at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, NASCAR, and Chicagoland Speedway right here in Illinois. He also worked closely with the Arnold Palmer Group, where he helped oversee the PGA Tour's premier championships. Joey, we are so honored to have you here. So should we just dive right in?
Absolutely, and happy for this to take any path that we want. I've got some good stories probably from behind the scenes of racing at the highest level, some interesting things from the Arnold Palmer Group. But what's interesting for me is in all those instances, I've worked for family businesses, whether it was my own or the Holman Georges who ran Indianapolis, or the Francis that ran NASCAR, the Arnold Palmer family, and Amy specifically. So we're going to have some fun, maybe tell a couple stories. We'll keep everything, above board. But it's interesting when you think about sports and families and the impression it leaves on everybody. I'm a very lucky person. I've had a chance to have some fun at some really cool properties, and the reason why I'm up here is because of this ability or opportunity to put on the biggest President's Cup in our history, and that's why I was motivated to sneak out of Florida and spend a couple cold winters up here and have some fun, but it's going to be fantastic, so let's just dive right in.
Okay, so can you share with us what led you into the world of this golf career, racing career, and how it shaped your career path?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how much time we have for me to go through that.
We have all day.
But
it's
a little bit of a story, and it's got to start with my grandfather. And so my grandfather was a race car driver back in the 40s, and he raced in the Indy 500. He finished fifth 3 times and credited as the only man to ever wear a seatbelt, or the first man to wear a seatbelt in the Indy 500. Back then in the 40s, they thought it was safer to get thrown from the car in an accident. They were averaging over 100 miles per hour at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Now, the reason was they did not have fuel cell technology. So every crash was a fire, and they wanted you away from the crash. Well, World War II happens, and racing is outlawed. So here he is, an out-of-work race car driver. So he buys the remnants of an automobile stunt show from the widow of Lucky Teeter. That was the stuntman who created that stunt show, who died performing a stunt. So my grandfather purchased it, and from 1943 to 1998, my family ran the Joie Chitwood Thrill Show. And I spent 20 years of my life traveling this country. I had a truck driver's license. I drove one of the car carriers, performing at fairs and speedways. And I've got some images. I would stand on the side of a car while my dad drove it on two wheels.
That's awesome.
I learned how to drive a car on two wheels. But that was my life. And I did that from age 5 to age 24. Evel Knievel. Credits.
I saw the picture. I mean, as a child growing up in the 70s, Eva Knievel was the guy, had the stunt doll, and seeing the picture of
Absolutely.
you and him
So
together.
here's what's interesting. We did a great segment with him and Frank Gifford on the 1977 ABC Wide World of Sports. But what's interesting is Evel credits seeing my grandfather's stunt show when he was a teenager in Butte, Montana, as the reason why he got in the business, which ultimately led to the friendship between the families. And one of the cars I drove in the stunt show was a miniature Indy race car, and it was built for me by Evel Knievel's dad.
Super
And so
cool.
you've got this really cool connection. And so for me, though, there was a moment in time where I felt like I needed to do my own thing, and it was time to go do something different. Now, it was a challenge to get to that point. I really wasn't interested in going to college. I was a stuntman. I was going to follow in my family's footsteps. So I didn't really want to go to college. But the old man said, hey, this is what you're going to do. And I probably wasn't prepared to apply myself. So if you're going to go someplace and not apply yourself, I would recommend the University of Florida in Gainesville.
My daughter wants to go.
From what I
Good.
remember,
Yeah.
a lot of good football games and some parties, but I did graduate and then spent another year with the stunt show, and that's when it was time to figure something else out. But I had to hit a restart, kind of check myself of what do you want to do? Like, you've been doing this for 20 years, you're not really prepared to do something else. And so I actually went and got a graduate degree. Kind of needed to refocus, and I wanted to get involved in motorsports management. Here I'd been traveling forever. I've been at most speedways. Grandfather was a race car driver, so I sent out a couple resumes to the biggest names in motorsports I could think of. Tony George at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Bill France at NASCAR. I got a rejection letter from NASCAR, and Tony answered my letter back, and they needed some help opening up the Walt Disney World Speedway at Disney World. So 1995 and 96, I got hired for 3 months to go help open up the speedway. Luckily got connected full-time after that, and I moved to Indianapolis from 96 to 99. Where it gets really fun is Tony George and Bill France were partnering to build a racetrack in Chicago. And so I got put on the committee for due diligence and ultimately threw my name in the hat, and I was named the VP GM of Chicagoland Speedway in Joliet and had to build the property, 2 years to build it, and I ran it the first 2 years. Kind of ironic that I'd gotten the rejection letter from Bill, but now here I am in the partnership. But I did spend 3.5 years in Joliet, and we sold that out the first couple years, 75,000 seat,
Yep.
mile-and-a-half racetrack.
I was there for both the IndyCar races and the stock car ones. Oh, wow.
And by the way,
Yeah.
the IndyCar races those first 2 years were the best races I've ever seen.
Yeah.
We had finishes that were inches apart, but ultimately went back to Indianapolis, became their president, and was there to 2009. And then the France family came calling, and I was born and raised in Tampa, so a chance to have my son grow up in Florida. So went down to Florida and worked there for 10.5 years, a corporate officer in their public company, ran Daytona, ultimately became chief operating officer, and was in charge of 12 of the racetracks, 20 of the NASCAR races. A bit of a road warrior. I was used to it, but there was a point when they were taking the company private, and I decided after 10.5 years I wanted some golf time. I wanted to do something that I wanted to do. That lasted for about 2 months, maybe 3 months, and I got connected to the Arnold Palmer family. And that's where the family business element
how you
really came into
started.
play, because when I met with Amy Palmer Saunders, we talked about the experiences she's going through, and I could relate. And I always talk about family legacies and brands and logos and how special they are. But when your namesake is on the wall, there's a different passion behind it, and there's always 3 things you have to look at. You've got to figure out how to protect, preserve, and perpetuate the brand, right? And Mr. Palmer took a lifetime to build it. It can go away quite quickly if you're not really thoughtful about how you do that. And so we really connected from that standpoint of my own family business. I know exactly what that's like and the things that you have to think about. And after a couple years there, ultimately got connected to the PGA Tour, and they said, we're looking for somebody to run the biggest President's Cup in our history. And at that point, I felt like, okay, sign me up. Oh, we need to talk salary. Oh, that's right. Like, I was ready the minute I heard that. So that's the condensed version. I've got stories along the way. But for me, I'm a very lucky person to think that I left a family business as a stuntman and got to run some of the biggest properties in the world. The Indy 500, the largest single-day sporting event in the world. At Daytona, I led the $400 million renovation in which we rebuilt everything outside the fences, all 100,000 seats on the front stretch. So for me, the fact that I get to be in golf now, I've got everybody fooled. I've just got to fool them for about 5 more years, keep giving me cool properties to run. But I would say this, from a racing perspective and a golf perspective, those two sports are quite similar, much different than all of the other sports. There's no home team, away team. Right? There's this unique schedule that stretches across the country, and the concept is the same. You know, you have a multi-day event, you have to build venues and hospitality and experiences, but then you pack up and you go to, you know, across the country for the next event or the other event. And all of the drivers and all of the golfers are, in essence, independent contractors. So if Tony Stewart's driving a Chevy and you've got Rory hitting TaylorMades, so you got that kind of OEM concept, and then they've got their logos all over the place. So I felt very comfortable in the space.
Sure.
And then last thing, I still have my ticket stub from when I would cut school in Tampa, Florida, at Jesuit High School, and I'd sneak over and I'd catch the first round. Back then it was the Nestle Invitational at Bay Hill. And so the fact I used to actually go over to the event and I still had the ticket stub was a pretty cool story to tell in the interview about joining the team, that I appreciated what Mr. Palmer did for golf and had a chance to kind of sneak over from Tampa and catch it as a teenager.
That's awesome.
This is the first of a 2-part podcast series of our conversation with former NASCAR driver and executive director of the PGA Tour's landmark events, Joie Chitwood III. Join us for part 2 in a future episode where we discuss the upcoming President's Cup hosted at Medinah Country Club.